Are you dead? No? Okay, great. Are you sure? Double check. Okay, cool. Keep watching this video to find out how you might die. There's a Wikipedia article called The List of Unusual Deaths. It's quite long and quite hilarious, because people died and that's really funny. I'm gonna read out a large selection of them I find particularly giggle-worthy in chronological order. Now be warned, this list contains people from all over the world in all sorts of different historical periods with names in a swath of different languages, so if I pronounce someone's name wrong, I want to apologize ahead of time. That's right. I want to apologize that you're such a greasy nerd that you actually care about that sort of thing, because I'll be putting the person's name on the screen for you anyway, so you can look all this info up yourself. But don't do that, because you would be spoiling this video and future videos, and wouldn't you rather just sit and alt-tab on this video and go play your fucking daily quests in Warframe? Yeah, you would. Thank me later. Also, for this video specifically, I'm going to be tackling the ancient history portion of the list. And historical texts from back then, their kind of sources are muddied. So some of this may or may not be true, but I don't care, because they're on Wikipedia, which means that they have to be true. So fuck you, Miss Stoudemire, for giving me a C- on my newest history report. Citing Wikipedia is a credible source. Do you think that anyone can edit Wikipedia? That someone would just go on the internet and tell lies? I tried specifically for this one to only pick items with some level of historical evidence behind them, but take it with a grain of salt anyway. And remember that in future videos, the evidence for these tales is going to be a lot stronger. In the future, we've got cameras everywhere, and you may be able to even watch some of these deaths in real time with some creative Googling. Yay! Let's go! I wear sunglasses indoors, indicating I have a tiny penis. DRACO was a lawmaker back in ancient Greece around 600 BC, and he was also a giant asshole about his job. He thought punishing relatively smaller crimes like theft and forgery with the death penalty was a great idea, and wanted to punish murder and kidnapping with even more severe punishments, but wasn't sure how to punish people any harder than straight up killing them. You know the term draconian to describe any overly severe punishment? That's where this comes from. He was actually pretty dang popular for a bunch of historical reasons that aren't important to this video. But back in the day, it wasn't uncommon to show someone your appreciation in ancient Greece by tossing them gifts of hats, coats, cloaks, and snuggly items. One night, a horde of DRACO supporters showed up to see him at a theater, and began launching all sorts of wearable charities at him. Perhaps DRACO got too enraptured by his newfound crowdsourced textile pile, because he ended up smothered under the weight of the absurd amount of gifts and suffocated to death. Perhaps if he had lived through the incident, DRACO would have instituted a new no-coat smothering law, and a lot more people would have wound up on this list for their inevitable cuddle-puddle death penalty. Speaking of old-school lawmen, Charondas was another Greek law dude who lived around the same time. He was a big fan of Greece's assembly, which was a town square but for the male citizens, and they could propose and vote on laws while the female citizens stayed at home to watch the kids or fight off the invading Persians or whatever. One of the laws he issued was that anyone who brought weapons into the assembly was to be put to death, which is pretty fair. It's hard to cast a fair vote on whether or not the 7th female phalanx should be given additional spears to hurl at the incoming war elephants when Hippolades is digging an emerald dagger into your kidneys because his wife is in that regiment, and boy does he want to hurry up and remarry. But the cool thing about modern laws is we usually have systems to interpret them and follow them to some degree of common sense. We usually fuck up a lot and do a terrible job and overcomplicate things, but we try. Charondas didn't give a shit. His word was law. Period. So when he ran into the assembly seeking help in defeating some nearby barbarians, he stopped, tapped his belt, noticed he left his knife attached to it, said, "Aw, fuck," put his knife in his hand, and because he didn't want to break his own law, ended his own life. Damn, that was kind of fucking stupid, but also badass. Like me. Okay, let's do a simpler and somehow even goofier one. Archeon was a famous Greek pancratiast. Okay, so in simpler terms, pancration, no idea how to say this, was the ancient Greek form of mixed martial arts. It was like wrestling and combat and kicks and, you know, you were naked and focused on punching another man's balls and touching another man. It's basically MMA. Also, why the fuck do all the Greeks have the most complicated names for both them and like everything? Why can't they have a guy named Steve who died Swimming. I know how to say the word swimming. Archeon was mid-match with his opponent in the Pancration finals of the Olympic Games, and he was looking pretty fucked because his opponent had him in a mighty chokehold. Trying to teach this punk a lesson, Archeon kicked his opponent in the ankle and hit his opponent so hard that he immediately gave the referee the signal that he forfeited. Counterintuitively, that spelled bad news for Archeon because his opponent gave the pussy out sign while he had Archeon mid-chokehold. That means he broke Archeon's neck in the process doing the maneuver. That's pretty wacky stuff, but our boy Archeon was awarded the victory for the match after he died, meaning he went out a winner. And really, I think that's all he could have asked for. You know, that and not having his neck snapped by a greasy naked man in front of a live studio audience, but a win's a win all the same. This next one's a bit flimsy in terms of whether or not it actually happened, but it involves one of the first true badass strongmen of history, so I'm gonna tell it to you anyway. While historical records pretty much confirm that this next tough guy was a real historical person, we're not entirely sure if some of the spectacular tales about him actually happened. So yes, I am talking about Jesus Christ. Yeah! I'm making jokes that are edgy and controversial now. What are you gonna do about it? Give it Reddit gold? Milo was an ancient Greek man who tried to become just like famous Greek hero Hercules, but in real life. This guy was like if Superman, Kenshiro, Popeye, or Arnold Schwarzenegger was a real-life person who went around doing shit left and right to show off how insanely ripped he was. He'd stick his fingers out and challenge people to bend them. He'd stand on a grease disc and challenge them to push him off it. He'd hold a pomegranate in his hands and challenge people to wrestle it away from him. And not only could no one ever do it, but the pomegranate would always come out unscathed, unsquished, and fucking delicious. In fact, one of his most famous and motivational-based stories is how he trained to wrestle in the Olympics. Milo would raise a calf from birth and literally raise it up on his shoulders every single day as he trained. As the calf grew into a bull, Milo would also grow into a bull of a man, depending on if someone wanted their wife fucked or not. Then, when the Olympics would roll around 4 years later, he would carry the full-grown bull all the way to the stadium on his shoulders, slaughter it as a sacrifice to Zeus, and then eat it for efficient carbo and protein loading. But his big cock walk was to be his undoing. One day while on a stroll, presumably while looking for some bricks to karate chop the fuck in half, Milo noticed a villager trying to split a stump with the stupid, weak, pussy way of doing it, using a hammer and some wedges. Milo told the man to stand aside as his mighty calloused hand sausages would easily pull apart the stubborn wood. The villager promptly fucked off to get Milo some food as a thank you, but unwittingly committed murder in the process through his generosity. While Milo tried to crack open the wood with his bare hands, his fingers became trapped in the middle as the wedges fell out of the tree in his struggling. While he waited for the villager to return to help him, a pack of wolves showed up and ate him alive. Now, do you believe that story? Well, you shouldn't, because Milo was way too badass to go down to a pack of wolves like that. Later renditions of the story change it to a roving pack of lions who tear him to shreds instead, which is better, I suppose, but knowing how shredded Milo was, I'd wager that what actually happened is he killed every single lion with his mighty kicks, shattered the log with a knee strike, and then went on to become America's 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt. Zeus was a Greek painter who died of laughter because of how wonky his portrait of Aphrodite turned out. The ugliest fuck woman who commissioned it insisted on modeling for it, and while none of his paintings are still around today for us to also laugh at, we can take joy in knowing that he gave the woman the utmost ultimate roast throughout the entirety of human history. Pythagoras is the guy 99% of us know for coming up with that one thankfully easy part of 7th grade geometry. According to a few mostly credible accounts, Pythagoras was being chased by some political enemies who intended to kill the shit out of him. He was quicker than them, and he managed to get away, until he ran to the edge of a bean field. Pythagoras hated beans. Really hated beans. No, seriously, this dude hated beans. He even tried to get them prohibited by the government because he thought eating them was the worst fucking thing on the planet. He hated beans more than life itself, and I'm not exaggerating. As soon as Pythagoras saw the bean field, he immediately stopped running, turned around, and let his attackers kill him. On one hand, I want to firmly applaud Pythagoras for sticking to his principles, but on the other hand, they're just fucking beans, dude. Oh my god, what a fucking baby. The philosopher Heraclitus has one so good I'm just gonna read the Wikipedia entry verbatim, because there's nothing I can add to it to make it better. Heraclitus was said to have been devoured by dogs after smearing himself with cow manure in an attempt to cure his dropsy. Yep. AESCHYLUS, who is making me sick of pronouncing Greek names. Thanks a lot, other cultures that didn't write shit down. Anyway, AESCHYLUS was a Greek playwright who made the mistake of being bald in his old age. He was so bald that he died the same way 70% of all bald men statistically will perish. An eagle dropped a turtle on his head. The person who witnessed his death wrote that the eagle most likely mistook his head for a rock and was trying to smash the turtle's shell to get a nice lunch. But I think we all know what really happened. Because the eagle didn't speak Greek, it was tired of hearing all these confounding names and decided to take matters into its own hands. Empedocles once declared himself a divine being who was no longer mortal, and he thought he could prove this by jumping into an active volcano. He mysteriously died somehow. Now, finally, we get to talk about someone who isn't Greek. Thank you, Persia, for giving me the story of Mithridates. Mithridates was a Persian soldier who was sentenced to execution for embarrassing the king. That's harsh, but fair. Never look weak in front of your men. Mithridates was to be executed by Scaphism? Is that right? The hell is Scaphism? Scaphism. Scaphism, otherwise known as the boats. Oh. Okay, yeah, I had a good feeling this was coming. Let's talk about the ancient Persian execution / torture method known as the boats. If you're sentenced to the boats, like Mithridates, you'll be placed between two hollowed out logs, or boats, that will perfectly seal around your body. Your arms and legs are going to stick out of the sides of the boats like Penny from the Amazing World of Gumball, except your head's going to stick out the top too. You get it, whatever. Then you'll be force-fed milk and honey, which, hey, that's great. Maybe this boat thing ain't so bad, is what someone not wearing two boats around their body would say. Because the point of that is to get you to shit yourself. As you shit yourself, you're also going to be doused in the same milk and honey you're being force-fed, all the while being left in the sun, so all of this shit is going to get super rank and super duper sticky. Now, dying of exposure like that is pretty unpleasant and gross, but that's not the point. The point of the boats is to have the flies, insects, larvae, maggots, and potentially hungry old people come to look for you as a tasty snack. Sitting in a wooden diaper of your own shit and having potentially thousands of vermin digging around in your skin until you die? Whoo! I didn't think I'd be able to talk about something so arousing this video. Democritus was a philosopher who lived to be 109 years old, which is impressive no matter how hard to pronounce your name is. While he was on his deathbed, his sister was super pissed and threw a big hissy fit because there was a 3-day religious festival that was coming up and she had some super important religious ceremony or whatever to do. Democritus told her not to worry and to go out and flash her clerical cooter because he had a trick up his sleeve. Democritus had bread. There's no metaphor here. There's no clever wordplay. He had a fresh loaf of bread, and he placed it under his nose. Using just the smells of the Pillsbury Doughboy's plump ass, he was able to survive for all 3 days of the festival, after which he immediately died. Democritus further proves that in life, all that matters is getting that bread. And fucking your sister. Maybe? I don't know. I really wasn't paying attention. Philetas of Kos was a Greek intellectual who died in the exact same way that I will. He studied arguments and incorrect grammar so intensely that he eventually starved to death. Glad to know I'm not the only one preparing to launch into a 6-hour and 49-minute long roast on each and every person I've ever met as I'm finally succumbing to the Grim Reaper's cold, icy touch. Okay, let's get a bit more hair on our chest and testicles in our sack. Let's talk about another badass death. Greek philosopher ZENO of Citium was going about his merry way, probably having just finished exchanging his casual anal sex hellos with an ancient Greek friend of his, when he tripped, fell, and broke his toe. He then slammed his fist into the ground and screamed, "I come! I come! Why dost thou call for of me. Then he held his breath until he died. Now call that what you want, because I'm going to call it not going out like a punk bitch. And hey, fucking finally, it's another person not from ancient Greece, which means I'm going to butcher this name even worse. Qin Shi Huang was the first emperor of China. Silly Westerners like you, me, and anyone watching this who somehow could sneak a VPN under Xi Jinping's nose might recognize him as the emperor who has the terracotta army in his tomb. Qin Shi Huang thought that the secret to eternal life was the wonderful elixir known as mercury. He even had mercury placed inside pills so he could swallow handfuls of them in a bid to achieve immortality. Wow. I wonder how that worked out. Hey, what's the name of this video again? Greek philosopher Crispy Lips, also known as Chrysippus, died of laughter after he saw a donkey eating figs. In between hysterics, he said someone should bring the donkey wine to wash down his meal with. I don't get it. I don't get how that's that funny. What's so funny about a donkey eating fig? Okay, I get it. Claudius Drusus was one of the sons of Roman Emperor Claudius, and he died while playing with a pear. You know, the fruit. He threw it way up in the air and said, "Yo guys, check this out, it's my impression of your mother." Whereupon he leaned back and tried to deep throat the pear on re-entry. Little did he know he didn't have nearly the throat dexterity nor rigorous sucking stamina of your mother, so he promptly choked on the pear and died. If the story were instead about suffocating between a huge pair of titties, then it would be the inverse tale of how I died choking on your mother. Tiberius was a Roman emperor for a while, and he died a poor-ass bitch just like all of us will one day. The moment he died, the next Roman emperor was being sworn in. But what's this? Tiberius wasn't fucking dead! He actually managed to revive back to life, and everybody freaked the fuck out. There was genuine chaos as everyone flipped out that Tiberius would enact swift fucking vengeance on everyone so hasty to name the next emperor immediately after he died. Pandemonium erupted amongst everyone who was gathered around his deathbed, which is when Macro, an elite empire guard named after what true hardcore gamers use to make their WoW raids a little less tedious, took the opportunity to smother Tiberius with his pajamas, and finally ushering in the reign of a much more straightforward ruler, Caligula. Two apostles of Jesus died in some pretty fucked up ways just for being friends with Jesus. It's pretty standard Christian knowledge that Peter chose to be crucified upside down because he didn't believe he was worthy of being crucified the same way as his savior was. But maybe a bit more fun to talk about is Simon the Zealot. Simon the Zealot was also hung upside down, but instead of being crucified, he was viciously sawed in half, starting with his cock and testicles. Yeah, they don't teach you that one too often in Bible camp, do they? St. Lawrence I already covered in my even more unusual last meals and words video. I will link that in the description. Long story short, if you don't want to support me by watching more of my amazing content, St. Lawrence was sentenced to be killed by being roasted alive on a giant grill. After cooking for a bit, he joked with his tormentors, "Turn me over, I'm done on this side." This earned him the title of patron saint of cooks, chefs, and comedians, and my goddamn respect. Marcus of Arethusa was a Christian bishop who wanted to go out as a martyr like all the big boys of Christianity. His choice of sacrificial death was to be suspended in a honey-smeared basket until bees and wasps stung him to death. Oh my god, they Winnie the Poohed his fucking ass. Poohed his fucking ass. And finally, Valentinia I was a Roman emperor and a second historical man who tried to die the same way that I will eventually. He had a stroke caused by getting too angry with foreign ambassadors. Does that make me a racist? Maybe, but I'm still alive. Take that, you stupid fucking foreign ambassadors.